Hey, this is Zac.
And I'm Clint, and we wanted to thank Exo-terra for sponsoring this episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Exo-terra is the industry leader in glass terrarium enclosures, and we are a big fan of getting to see the species we work with both at home and at the university.
We utilize Exo-terra caging here at Metazotics, and in addition to top quality terrariums, Exo-terra offers an array of heating options, lighting, supplements, decor, and truthfully anything needed or wanted when keeping reptiles.
Thank you, Exo-terra, for supporting Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
All right. Now we're recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. As always, Zach's here with brother from another mother, Clint Bartley. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing really well, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's the end of the damn semester, dude. I got 1 week. I can make it through this week without somebody having an existential crisis in my office, and we've come close. Like every hour, it seems like there's somebody in there. I'm about to fail out of college. It's the end of days. And there's only so many times you can be like, you can do it. That's all I got to say about that. But, you know, I encourage them all.
I think in any profession, we've got those constant things that we have to say over and over. I think for me, it's, you know, you hear the, oh my God, you know, the world's coming to an end. I'm not going to graduate. And I hear my ball python won't eat.
Yep.
Over and over and over and over and over. So,
yeah.
No.
So I got to get through this week. And the next week, I'm heading off to Costa Rica, which is pretty awesome. Doing a rocket run down there. For the people that were at Colubrid Fest, you all met my grad student, Zach Kaminsky. He's doing his thesis on tarantulas, which is pretty cool. I wrote a paper talking about using natural history data to keep snakes and how you find that data and testing the data. And Zach came on board and basically said, hey, I want to do something with tarantulas. And I was like, let's do that paper for tarantulas. And for those of you who are tarantula keepers, you might know Richard Stewart. And Richard Stewart has a much larger YouTube presence than Clint and I do. And he's in Wheeling too. He's a tarantula guy. So Zach helps out Richard all the time. So it's really weird that two people that have a really big presence in social media with herps and tarantulas literally live, I think, 1.5 miles away from him.
Okay, so here's what's crazy that you have that going on with that individual that close. There is a Facebook group called All Bugs Go to Kevin.
Yeah. He's reached out to me.
He's in the shop all the time. He lives here. Yep. I mean, Kevin and I, we chat. Yeah. I mean, there's like 200 and something thousand people in that group. It's incredible. And it's so funny because I'm in it, and every now and then I'll see someone go, so who's Kevin and why do all bugs go to him? And I just chuckle because I'm like, I know Kevin. Kevin's here all the time. You know, it's that's so funny that you've got, you know, such another big invert guy, you know, there near you too.
Richard's badass. His collection is amazing. Like I've gone to his shop a couple times. Well, not shop, but his facility is the best word for it. And everything's in bioactive enclosures, and they're all exos, and it's pretty damn inspiring place. But
cool.
So cool. So I'll be down there. And for those of you that you know that I purchased a pair of Stewart's milk snakes, and I got them because they're the Guanacaste locale, which is the province of Costa Rica that we do all of our work when we're down there. And Zach sent me a picture of a freaking Stewart's milk snake in a fence that he found at night. And I was like, oh, you know, you're definitely taking me there. So I will be going there if you keep Stewart Eye, and I will be taking pictures, and I'm actually going to put them up on the CCR social media pages so we can get a little bit of an idea of what the habitat looks like, because they're literally slithering around where I'm going to be sleeping, which is pretty cool.
So awesome. And this is yet another trip that Zach is going on that I hear about it as he's about to go, and not a, hey, Clint, I'm going to this cool place. You should come too.
Well,
so I want everyone to know that's how these conversations go.
We're going into the holiday season, Clint. You got to make sure Metazotics survive.
You're only going for a weekend. I can make it for a weekend.
That's true. Okay. Well, Anyway, moving on. So, yeah, that's the big thing with me. Other updates in my universe, it's brumation time. It's really funny. The last time we recorded, I remember distinctly talking about, I don't know when to put things down because it's really cold and it's really warm and then it's warm and then it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by God, it got cold up here where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
I am only an hour and a half, 2 hours south of the area that got like 3.5 feet of snow over the weekend with the lake effect. So the temperatures drop like rocks, and I got my govies out in the garage, and everybody's moving out there. In fact, there's some bins behind me, and I'm cooling some things down just on the floor in here to get them ready before I ship them out there. So brumation will be in full effect here in the Loughman household. And I bring a lot of the animals from the university to the garage as well, because it's just easier and safer, and I can check on them multiple times a day, and I don't want the out of sight, out of mind thing going down. So that's the big deal in my world. Semester's coming to an end, and brumation is finally upon us. So yeah, that's that. What's up with you?
God, it had a lot going on, really, to be honest with you, over the past couple of weeks. So we have first want to say thank you to Amy Zerkle, because Dex has him some Oregon red-sided garters now and loves them.
I saw that Viv. That was cool.
Yeah. He's had a lot of fun, putting things together, and finally has snakes in his room. So good stuff there. So let's see. Gosh, obviously we talked about all the Black Friday prep on the last show, and now we've had Black Friday, and that was a big success. Thank you to Exo-terra for sponsoring the Black Friday event here at Metazotics. Gave us quite a bit of product to give away, and every hour on a drawing. So that was exciting. And I'll talk more about Black Friday and a lot of other things whenever we get to the market update. But obviously, we had that. We had the Pitayas.
Yep.
Niagara marginatas. I'm saying it right. Had those arrive and had some heartbreak, but had some big wins. We had one arrive DOA. So I had 6 that were sent to me. One arrived DOA. Another one died the very next morning. So I was like, okay, here we go. And there was another one that was a little weaker, it seemed a little weaker, and it passed a few days ago. And so I'm down to 3. Now the 3 are a trio. So I'm like, that's okay, good. So far we have a win, and a pair. So the male and one of the females took pinkies that all the scenting I did was I washed the pinky off and then just rubbed it on the back of a green tree frog. So I didn't have to get into guts. I didn't have to, worry about parasites, things like just a little bit of rub on the skin. And I've got a pair that took pink. So I'm like, beautiful. Yes. So good stuff going on there. And hopefully, that's a good sign of things to come, with them. So that's really neat. Like you, I'm shutting off heat next week. Everything's going down next week. It should be good and cleaned out by then. So it's like, and you know what? Another great thing that we haven't even mentioned about this time of year, and when it comes to reptiles and reptile rooms, the absence of bugs. The absence of forward flies. I love when the weather drops this cold and the bugs are gone. It's I love that piece. So so that's happening. We had Ox, his job's getting easier now because of all the animals that were sold on Black Friday. So things are getting a little more calm in the nursery.
Very cool.
We've got several projects that now we'll be working on once the collection goes down, because that opens Steve up for me to kind of pivot him in different directions. One of which is I don't want to say designing. We're making these rack systems. It's basically baker's racks, but they're kind of being decked out a little bit so that we can roll product in and out at shows. So it's instead of trying to put product out on tables, it's just wheeling it off the trailer, wheeling it back on the trailer. And I think that's going to be pretty neat. So that's one piece. We also, something about that I'm not going to go into detail about, could end up being some pretty big news coming out of Metazotics in the next couple months. It's something that we're looking at. So sorry for the the cloak and dagger here, but we'll obviously more fun stuff in the works, as there always seems to be. So I think that's probably it that we have going on over here. I do want to make sure that we remind everyone, check out Colubrid and ColubroidRadio.com. We do have shirts. We'll be actually shipping a lot of those over to Kayla in California. She's going to run those up for us.
And we will be in Pomona.
Show. That's right. So please, everyone, check out the website and make sure to go to that conservation tab.
Yes.
We want to make sure that everyone is donating to the CCR Conservation Fund. We continue to raise money here at Metazotics every day for that fund, and we really look for some help from everyone. So
talk about that real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
So I've been kind of giving updates to let people know where we stand with the donations from Colubrid Fest, and then the fund is also going to be, ultimately contributing to this as well. But I put out an ad for a grad student to do. At the time, it was indigo snake research at the Orion Center for Central Florida Zoo, and put that out on something called Texas A&M. If you're listening to this and you're a college student and you want to know where you go to find internships and you don't have an advisor that's telling you where to look, if you go to the Texas A&M Wildlife Resource Job Board, it's a free website, and people like me can put up ads for free. Doesn't cost anything, which is pretty awesome. And all the way back when I was in school, this is where you went to look for gigs. So it's been around forever. So I put up the ad for the Indigo Snake Project, and immediately just started getting hit after hit after hit after hit. And then I realized I need to pivot here, and I need to, monopolize, or not capitalize, that's the word, on this. And so I kind of broadened the ask. I begged and pleaded and stole. I did all of those things with my university to get more GAs. And, that happened. And so I was able to give out 4 GAs that were herpetologically oriented. 2 of those GAs that will start in May are literally going to Iowa to work on this project. Like, they are going to come to West Lib for 4 days, and then I say goodbye, and then they go to Iowa, and they'll be doing, the project we've talked about. There were a couple of the people that got the gigs were listeners. So there's proof in the pudding, and I interviewed a couple people that didn't ultimately get the jobs, and I wish I could have taken them on. But I can say that if I interviewed you, you did amazing. So I just want to send that out to all the people associated with the past couple weeks of my life trying to find these graduate students. But I am truly pumped about all things snake research related in my life right now. It's looking really amazing. My wife actually made a comment, was like, "You've got like a weird pep in your step. Like, what the hell's going on?" I was like, "I'm just thinking about those hognose snakes in Iowa." Like, and then of course,
and that's marriage.
Yes, I got up. So not me. I was like, well, So
you reminded me of it. This has been years ago. And when Wendy hears this, she's going to roll her eyes, because I remember once, we're laying there and she looks at me and says, "What are you thinking about?" And I go, "Dinosaurs." Don't ask a man what he's thinking if you don't. At that moment, it was dinosaurs.
There you go. Jesus. So anyway, I'm real excited. And then the guy who was in charge of the project initially, he and I have been in communication. And once the semester's done and over with, he's at a small school like West Lib. His semester will be done and over with. Then we're going to start doing the planning meetings, and I'll be able to give updates on what exactly we're going to be doing scientifically. So please know, we are definitely using this money for science. So if you want to fund science on Colubrid and colubroids, that's all that lives there, for crying out loud. So, and some of the species like bull snakes, we keep bull snakes. So I'll be able to share all the really cool data on microhabitats and temperatures, and it's great stuff. So anyway, I digress. I'm done.
All right. Well, do we want to go into market and science updates?
Sure.
You want to go first or second?
Oh, whatever you want.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is a special one for me because normally I'm presenting other people's research, but this time, bump, I get to present a project I've talked about for the past 2 years on this podcast.
It's a cool one too.
My graduate student pay, I am extremely proud of them. They worked their ass off. And my co-authors on this are Dr. Bogan at Central Florida Zoo. He's the director of the Orion Center for Indigo Conservation. And then we have this amazing woman, Dr. Ellen Dierenfeld. She knows everything about nutrition for everything. The first time I was talking to Dr. Ellen, before we go any further, or Dr. Dierenfeld, we're on a Zoom, and the doorbell rang, and she's like, "Oh, I got to go." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so she got up and she ran to the door, and she came back, and she's holding a FedEx box, and she is like a kid on Christmas morning. And she sat down in her chair, and she was like, "Bet you never saw somebody so excited to get tree kangaroo crap." And then she opened up the box, and sure enough, in the box was freaking crap from a tree kangaroo, which she got to do this crazy nutritional analysis. And then that moment, I was like, "I like you. You and I could be friends." So, and she is a freaking genius. I'm actually going to start covering some of her papers because she's done the nutritional values of like a chick versus a rat versus a mouse, which is really cool stuff. But the title of the project, if you're in podcast land, was Evaluation of Nutritional and Health Status in Captive Eastern Indigo Snakes in Response to Formulated Sausage Diet. So I've been talking a bunch about, we made these sausages and we basically fed them to the indigo snakes, and then we compared the sausages to a rodent diet, and then we took blood and we looked at various vitamins. And the idea herein was indigo snakes that are being reared for release, because most of the snakes at OCIC are going to be let go at the release sites. They were noticing that they were kind of tubby, for lack of a better word. I made that PC. And they just couldn't move. Like, they would be released into the field and they were not fast. And if you're being released into the field and you're not fast, you're going to get eaten by a raptor, a raccoon, another indigo snake, for crying out loud, a bigger black racer. And so the idea here was, can we give them a diet that is more like, that has a nutritional profile of a snake? So Dr. Dierenfeld actually knew the nutritional value of snakes from some work that was done with Burmese pythons in the Everglades. And you can't just make a sausage out of berms because they have those penostomes in them. And so if you cut them up and turn them into a sausage, you're going to put the parasites in there, and you can't get those parasites can survive freezing, heating. They're like non-destructible or indestructible. So we, with this paper, came up with a recipe for a sausage. Now, this is my disclaimer. This is not the ye almighty recipe, but it is a recipe, and we tested it, and we did see a better nutritional response in our snakes. The problem with the study, there's always a problem, and so I'm not going to like just talk about the good. We're going to talk about the bad, is that the time frame we had and the money that we had, because doing blood chemistry is expensive, we could only use X amount of snakes, and then we had issues with some of the snakes, so our sample sizes are low. So before anybody like gets upset about that, I'm saying our sample sizes are low. So this is essentially what equates to what we call a pilot study in science, which is we threw it out there. You can like it, you can leave it, but we hope that somebody will pick it up and test it and then, do bigger and badder things with it. So I don't really want to go over the study so much as I want to kind of scroll down here to the bottom. These are those outdoor enclosures for the indigos, by the way. That's like the coolest thing on earth. But if we're going down here, this is what the sausages look like. And so you can see it's just it looks, just like one of the brands I'm not going to say due to trademark issues, but it looks just like a sausage you would feed from one of the other companies that do this. And then these graphs kind of show our different values, and we're not really going to go over this right now. But what I want to do, we're scrolling all the way to the bottom, is this right here. So I'm going to highlight this if you're watching it on YouTube. So this section we call supplementary materials. If you click on this link right here, it will take you to a download, and I just happen to have that download. So everybody bear with me on YouTube land. Okay, and then we're going to do this. You get a PDF, and that PDF is pretty interesting because in the PDF, we went so far as to make it available, the recipe. And not only do we have the recipe, but we have how to make it. So I love this picture of our sausage grinder below our logo. It took Pay, I think, an hour and a half to set that up. But anyway.
It's so clean.
Yeah, so clean. That is not what that looks like when you're making the freaking sausage.
I know.
So anyway, so we have, like, you need to cut it up to cube, then you grind it to 8 millimeters, then you grind it to 4 millimeters. And then if you come down here, the faux snake diet, that's the diet where you're basically going to have the nutritional profile of a snake. And we tried to make this so that anybody can reproduce it. So there it is. We even show you how to properly thaw out things because our reviewers were like, you've got to show people how to thaw out things. So don't think people with PhDs are the smartest people in the room all the time, guys. I'm pretty sure we all know how to thaw out stuff. But anyway, and so in the end, you got this sausage. So what's really cool is the ingredients. I'm going to talk about that real quick. The meats that we used pork, we used alligator, and we used rabbit. And most of those are lean. Rabbit and alligator is insanely lean.
Yeah.
And then you add the pork, and the pork brings in the just enough fat to kind of get to the same rough biochemical constituency of a snake. So for Ophiophagus snakes, these sausages work. And I can speak to two things: Drymarkin, indigos, cribos, and hydrodynasties, my blessed false water cobras. This stuff's like crack to them. Once they eat one, they will just eat them over and over and over and over again. And one of the things I thought that was really weird is that we thought we were going to have to scent these things because it's just a bunch of ground up meat. We didn't have to scent these things. Like, I distinctly remember the first time Pay was offering one of the falsies in my office at work, and our guard was down, and the false water came in like a freaking missile, and it knew immediately that was food. So I don't know if it was the alligator and the reptile tissue. I don't know what the hell it was, but it's been one of my favorite projects we've done to date. So there you go.
Have you guys done this with, adults, with babies, with yearlings, with, various sizes?
The study that the actual research project that's presented in the paper was just adults, but we totally, when we were messing around, when Pay was messing around making the initial batches at West Lib, because Pay had to learn how to make the damn sausage in the first place because they didn't do that at the time. And I think still this day, they are actually a vegetarian, which is wonderful that they had to make, sausages. But anyway, Pay made smaller sausages, bigger sausages, intermediate sized sausages. So we were kind of feeding them to everything. So, and then another thing that I will say, and once again, disclaimer, I'm not saying to go to this diet only and this is all you should feed your snakes. No, variety is the spice of life. Making these sausages as a supplement or as a different, prey item, sure, I will advocate for that. But if you look, like, even though it has some exotic things like alligator, which you might think is expensive, or rabbit, pound for pound with the price of rodents now, these sausages come in at about the same as I think that we priced them out that like 2 to 3 sausages was equal to the cost of a medium rat.
Wow.
So there's that as well. So pretty proud of Pay for this one. This is their big moment, and I've been waiting for this moment to present this paper. I knew it was going to happen, and yeah, so there it is. Ta-da, we're done.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Really, really neat. Wow.
Oh, one more thing. Max is going to share the articles link on our Facebook page. The article is open access, which basically means if you got the internet, you can find it.
Gotcha. We'll end up getting that that link on our website as well.
Yeah, too.
You know, whenever this show posts. So,
yep.
Very cool.
All right,
very
so that's
cool.
mine. What do you got?
Okay. So as far as the market, we've got some interesting things that have taken place. Obviously, we just had Black Friday. You know, I can start by going over how Black Friday was here at Metazotics. Now, again, I can't say that this is how Black Friday was for everyone. You know, I can expand it for a few. For us, you know, obviously, as I've stated before, and the advice I've given is if you're going to run a special or make it an event, not just we have sales, but make it an event. We did that and it was successful. We actually grew 25% over the same over Black Friday last year. So
Nice.
that's, and whenever you have a very high volume day in the first place, a 25% increase is an even bigger deal. Now, with that being said, the following day, Saturday, we saw a hit, meaning we did about half of what we did the Saturday after Black Friday last year. Now, we did have a micro event, and it's the only thing I can really think of that may have been affecting us because the majority of Saturday's sales were online sales. Not so much, you know, people were coming in, but not to the same degree. And we were still running the same specials as we did Friday. However, we had our first snow of the year. Now, with that being said, it didn't come until the afternoon and it wasn't anything crazy, but I think we're all familiar with how people react when weather's coming, right?
Yes.
And so, and it was cold, don't get me wrong, but I think that probably did affect us, you know, to a degree. But all in for Black Friday week, we were up about 12% to comp.
Cool.
So, I mean, all in, we were still very successful for that week. I talked to Rich, the owner of Reptile Basics and Vivarium Electronics, and they had a killer Black Friday, and Rich didn't even run specials. That's one of the things we kind of discussed as far as what were the ideas. And, you know, his thought was, you know, they're going to buy it. People are wanting just to buy, you know, that particular day. And I said, I get it. For me, it goes back to that event, you know, where I want to, I really want to make sure that it's you know, something that people are going to remember and want to go to every year. And, you know, to his point, he goes, it's hard to do that on a website. I go, fair enough. Yeah. So, so it did sound like for the industry, and with various facets, because I did talk to a couple other shops as well, that was a successful day for most. And it seems like we actually were maybe just a little bit above par on, I talked to some other retail outlets, and while they were successful, it wasn't to the same degree that they were expecting or what they typically see year over year. So, you know, while obviously it was a big day, I think a lot of the other retail market, now we'll see, there's going to be studies that come out and, you know, the news is going to say this or that, but just from the group that I spoke to, that's kind of the vibe that I got. Now this is our first episode of the month. So with that being said, that means that we are going to have some graphs, and I think that there is a really cool thing here that I want to point out, and I got to get it pop back open. Where is it? There you are. All right. So let's go ahead and share this. Okay, guys. So we're going to run through some numbers, and I want to point out something I'm seeing that I find very interesting. So as far as Morph Market, and keep in mind, everyone, that as always, the the market update is brought to you by ShowMeSnakes.com, Show Me Marketplace. Please, if you are out and about and wanting to check out a reptile show, get out to the Show Me Reptile shows. They're bound to have one near you. They have them all over the country. As we say every episode, Mickey is who made Colubrid Fest happen. So please go support those that support our community because it is a big, big deal for us. Okay, so let's go and let's take a look at some things here. As far as the species, we're still seeing ball pythons hovering at about 71% of what's listed right now on Morph Market. We've got colubrids up to 15%, boas at 10%, other pythons at 4%. The colubrid breakdown, we're seeing hognose continue to climb 37% now. You know, At one point, I think they were at 32. So they've taken 5% of the Colubrid share. Corn snakes have really started to take a step back compared to where they were at their peak. They're at 27% of the Colubrid makeup, and we've got all others at 36%. Now we'll give some numbers here. And this is one of the things that I found interesting, but then I kind of figured out why, or I have a theory. So ball pythons, there's actually 93 more of them listed today than there were a month ago. That's with Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all of that happening. So that didn't make sense to me. All other pythons, they're down 94, so a 3.8% change. Boas, 299 less, so 5.1% change there. Colubrids are actually up 57, so 0.6% change. Again, that's even with Black Friday and all that, so that didn't make sense to me either. So all in, there was only 149 fewer snakes listed today than there were a month ago. As far as the colubrids, whenever we say corn snakes took a step back, that's because they moved. There are 243 less corn snakes listed this month. Hognose, why'd they move up? Because there's 285 more listed than what there were a month ago.
Wow.
And I'm going to come back and talk about hognose in a minute. All others, there's only 15 more, so a 0.5% increase. I thought that, pretty interesting. So here, what we're going to look at, this is the line graph just showing all the way back from January to now. Originally, there was right at about 60,000 snakes listed. We took our lowest point in July when we fell below 45,000. Now we're right back up to about 57,000 roughly. And it's been kind of a flat line, as you guys can see here. Now, this represents ball pythons down here, total here, but it's been a flat line on both of those. This next one is what I want to talk about. First, I forgot. So whenever I said it, I found it interesting that there were more listed today than there were a month ago after all the Black Friday sales, but then it dawned on me. So for those who are not watching us on YouTube, what is in my hand right now is a fat stack of index cards. And what all these there's at least 50 index cards here. And what these index cards are snakes that have sold and have shipped, but I haven't checked them out of Morph Market yet. That's why they're still in a stack of cards on my desk. So the 57 more colubrids that are listed, well, here's 50 of them that are going to be wiped off now. And my whole point in saying this is I'm not the only one. I can't be the only one. So I am betting over the next 7 to 10 days, there's a significant drop. And we'll see if I'm right, when we check it later. But I think there'll be a significant drop where people catch up on all the snakes that have sold and get them off Morph Market. But also because I still have several snakes in the back that sold, but they haven't shipped yet. Yeah, and so I haven't even messed with Morph Market yet, to update any of that. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think that's why that number is higher than what we expected and why we didn't see a quick dip. But I think that dip is going to come soon. It's just going to be a little bit delayed, as far as the reporting. The other thing that I thought interesting to talk about is hognose. So two things actually. Before I go into hognose specifically, if you can't see the graph we're looking at now, here's something interesting. So on February 13th, when we started tracking colubrids, we were about at 6,400 colubrids listed. And that was the highest that we had seen. It dipped down to about 4,500. Now we're flirting with 9,000.
Yeah.
So here's what I find interesting. We're at December 4th, we're sitting at 9,000, which means we've only got 9 weeks roughly for that. If we're thinking trends are going to follow, if we're going to see a pattern here, that 9,000 should fall back down to about that 6,500 if the market is the same as it was a year ago. So I'm really interested in watching where that number goes over the next 8 weeks to see how close we get to where we started or how far above that line that we are. You know, and it could be a number of factors. It could be fewer snakes selling. It could be more people advertising, you know, on there. It could be more produced. Who knows? But it's interesting to say the least. I did not expect to see Colubrid numbers climb as high as they have to that level after seeing, you know, nearly 6,500 was the peak since we've been tracking. So,
cool.
So something cool. Next, I want to talk about hognose. So as we watch hognose now from last year, last month, hognose were the only colubrids that continued to climb, meaning we had more hognose listed. We had fewer corn snakes. We had fewer all others. And so if someone was looking at this line specifically, they would wonder if hognose were a species to get into, whether that's a smart, and again, this is just, I'm talking about it from a business perspective, not from a, do I like them? Do I want to work with them? Always going to tell you to go that route. But from an investment standpoint, would that be a smart move? And in some cases, in some ways, people would recommend against that because you're seeing where the supply is going up. Supply is going up, 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 while others are going down, which means they're selling. So here's what I would tell everyone. Think about how long the ball python market went up, 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 up. And so if 15 or 20 years ago, if someone would have said, you don't want to get into ball pythons because there's so many of them are being produced. Look at how much, you know, they over 20 years, even from that point, that there still was this huge increase, you know, in that market share. So my point is hognose, please nobody kill me for making this comparison because I love hognose too. But hognose,
I kind of like them too, Clint.
Yeah, I know you do. Hognose may be the ball pythons of the colubrid world, meaning they are going to be the dominant. They're already the dominant colubrid when it comes to market share. We see that. It's proven. We've got the data right there in front of us. But it also, because they are so heavy in mutations, they have so many morphs and combos. It's endless already, you know, at this point of the combinations that can be made. I'm not going to be surprised to see that line continuing to get higher. Yet those people, those individuals who are breeding hognose are still going to report healthy sales because that it's not just, oh, well, it's the market's getting flooded. No, that market is still growing. The people that want to work with them are still growing. So that's just another interesting line that I'm paying attention to. And just talking to, you know, hognose breeders, that's the vibe I'm getting, that it's their sales haven't slowed anywhere near, you know, any more than anybody else's in certain areas. So it's really cool that now after a year almost of tracking this, we're starting to see some things that really tell us some interesting facts and interesting trends. And now I just can't wait for us to get around to February and see where these lines fall and where these hit. Exactly. So a lot of cool stuff there. I would say that's about what I've got for the market update.
Okay. I need to backpedal a little. The science update was brought to us by Rare Genetics, Inc. I got so excited to present Pace paper. So sorry. If you got shed skins, send them to RGI. And hognose, you know, you want to get on that growing market. Be pretty cool to clean up a little bit of this morph action because as the guy writing the book, I've been trying to learn more about the morphs, and I just keep falling on my head. So that is why John is here, because John is doing an amazing job on that. That's
great. Well, and I can tell you when when RGI gets a hold of the hognose, you know, that's going to be a game changer, and it's just going to make it explode even faster because people are going to be able to get morphs created, combos created at an even faster rate, knowing, you know, if they're possible hets or hets and what have you. So, you know, a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pipeline there.
No, cool. All righty. Are we ready to bring on Joe?
Let's bring on Joe.
Okay. So our guest tonight is the one and only Joe DiStefano of Meteoric Serpents in the Colubrid Corruption podcast.
What's up, guys?
Hey, Joe.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah,
good to have you, my friend.
We had Joe on for the Colubrid Fest recap. Yeah, there's a lot of Colubrid in the past, like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
But we always intended on Joe having a standalone episode because we love him to death, and he's definitely part of the Colubrid community, and a mover and shaker in that community, I will say. Mm-hmm. And so this is Joe's standalone episode, which he definitely has earned in our eyes. So so if you live under a rock, you may not know. That would be the only way that there are 2 kind of very active Colubrid podcasts, I would say. There's obviously CCR that you're listening to and or watching, and then the other one, of course, would be Colubrid Corruption Podcast, which is Joe. So I'm going to say this now. I'm certain Clint agrees with me. If you listen to us, you need to listen to Joe. That's just 100%. it. 100%.
We listen.
Thank you.
We listen, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm actually, I'm an old fart. And for the longest time, he was only on your podcast was only on YouTube, and I was just like,
yes,
come on. Get it so that us geezers can listen to it while we're driving to work, and then that happens.
You see,
so
originally I was being selfish, and I wanted more YouTube views and to see it that way. And then I was like, you know what, I got to do this because I have way too many people asking. But I see now that I don't know if I'm gaining more of an audience from posting it otherwise, but I do see that a lot of people are listening to it there. So it definitely made sense to do that. So
yeah. And now I can, because my kid watches YouTube. I do not. So
yeah.
But having it when I go on my trips or whatever, I'm just slowly but surely going through the backlog episodes, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and seeing it's funny because I never really control the TV here at the shop. I just the most I ever say is we get something on the TV, and it's funny because they're going to put up either CCR, or Joe's podcast. I mean, it's one of the two, or it's and I never know. And throughout the day, because I mean, at this point, it'll be playing for 8 hours, so I never know what I'm going to see as I walk by, but it's going to be one of those 2 almost every time.
There we go.
Nice.
Sweet.
Nice.
So, we'll ask the standard operating question, and it's funny because I've heard you give this answer, so I already know the answer to the question I'm going to ask. But how did you get your start?
Yeah, so this started a long time ago, and it's not. I would say it's not the answer that people usually give. I grew up in New York City. I was not a field herper because I lived in the concrete jungle. So yeah, I grew up in New York. I loved animals since I was a little kid, though. So that was the thing. I grew up wanting to be a vet, and obviously, school did not land me that way. I learned I was not good at science. But so I was really into animals. I had fish tanks growing up, or a fish tank, and I had a local like mom and pop pet store that was all exotic animals. It was fish, there were reptiles, birds, stuff like that. So I grew up going to this store, and I went there one day with my dad when I was like 10 years old. We walked in and we were looking at stuff, and I would always look around and look at all the animals there. And then I came across this one tank that was marked Texas rat snake, $35. And I was like, Dad, why don't we get, a snake? I was like, look, it's only $35, right? So inevitably we went home that day with that snake. And the Texas rat snake, I mean, I love that species. It's one of my favorites. I always say if I had to get rid of like most of the collection, I would have to keep Texas rats. That's a species cool. I'd have to keep. But it grew from there. I wound up working at that pet store a few years later when I was like 14 or 15. It was my first job ever. So I was able to get a lot of hands-on experience when it came to learning and taking care of reptiles of all kinds of species, which included like lizards, bearded dragons. We hatched those a bit there. That's where I learned how to breed colubrids. I was there and doing a big part of breeding corn snakes and king snakes there. So that's where I kind of got my my roots of learning all this stuff. And I learned a lot of things the old fashioned way.
Nice.
I had talked about it with John Lasseter a few weeks ago about incubating. But the first way I learned how to incubate eggs was in the old fish tank method with a water heater. And the, you know, the egg tub floating on like we used to use like water bowls essentially, and we would put them there. But yeah, so I learned a lot of things that way. And then my collection started to grow. I bred snakes for the first time at like 16 years old in 2017. I bred Texas rats, and then I bred them again in 2019. And then you know, it's kind of history from there. The collection has grown a bit, and when my family moved to Florida in 2021, and I started learning about, you know, I could keep more species because in New York pythons were illegal, so I never got into ball pythons until I moved here. And yes, shameless, I'm a ball python breeder too.
Nothing wrong with that.
But
so was Clint.
Yeah,
I am. Yeah, I can't.
No, so yeah, the collection expanded a lot since 2021, and I've built up quite a collection I'm proud of. Stuff I like breeding, stuff I hope to breed over, you know, in the near future and stuff. So yeah, it's a mix of a bunch of different species.
So I know that, you know, you said that Texas was your first, because, you know,
Yeah.
you never forget your first, right? I mean, you fall
Yeah.
in love with it. So, but what is it about the Texas that you love so much? What draws you to those?
Yeah, so you know, at first it was just like, you know, it's a cheap snake, but like over the years, as I've learned, my second and third snakes were both scaleless. The second one was just like a normal scaleless, and then the third one was a scaleless leucistic, which was, you know, a pretty cool animal back then. And I got that one in 2018, I believe, for a steal of a price compared to where they are now, or even over the last couple of years. But yeah, and then I've grown over the years to learn just how variable they are and how interesting they could be, and how much you could really play with the different phenotypes, both with morphs and without, and even sometimes with the heterozygous individuals. You know, I have and I've made some like triple hets and stuff like that are just super, super nice looking. And then scaleless like double hets that are super nice looking and look really unique compared to some of the animals you see out there on the market. There are some Texas rats that are super drab, and I get that. You know, I hunt for the pretty snakes too. I'm, you know, how could you not? You got to go for the stuff that catches your eye. But I think there's so much untapped with the species, and I think the more people work with them, and I think they're like kind of forgotten about, and people, you know, breed them just as, you know, that generic, like they make a good first pet, and sometimes with like the leucistics, you know, people like all white snakes, but I really think there's so much to unlock with the species that we haven't really seen pushed in the hobby quite yet, and I'm trying to do that.
So how much do you love Burbrink? That's
you know what? So a lot of the taxonomy stuff is above my pay grade in terms of intelligence and when it came out and all that stuff, and actually learning about things. When I first learned about Texas rats and started really doing research, they were Linheimeri, like Pantherophis, not a Laffey. But so that's the name I kind of go by. But
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to bring it up because Zach, it annoys him when I talk about it.
Yeah.
Only a little.
So no, I'm with you. It's, you know, I mean, when it comes to shipping animals, it annoys me that, you know, have to pick what I want to write on
Lacey-Ack label.
Yeah, I'm like, so yeah, it's good stuff.
So Texas rats historically have this reputation of being, for lack of a better word, the assholes of the rat snakes of North America.
False. It's false.
And I have a fun fall Texas rat story. I don't even think I've told you this before. So when I was in college, I've said this before, I would go to the Columbus All Ohio Reptile Show pretty much religiously every month after month. Even if I didn't have any money to buy snakes because I was a poor college kid. That was my only bit of reptile entertainment. And it was, at the time it was better than going to the zoo because you could go and hold a freaking Morlet's crocodile. Now, today, I don't promote that, but, when you're 19, 20, you do dumb stuff. And I was walking around the show, and there was a guy there who kind of knew me. And it was like late in the day, and he went, "Zach, come here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I walk over, and he handed me a snake, just pulled it up out of this box. And he was like, "This is yours." And then I took it, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I don't want it back. It's yours." And it was this Texas rat snake that was doing the thing where they sit up like this and, gaping.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, now I at the time I thought this is the weirdest looking black rat snake I've ever seen in my life. And then I realized, with the, the high orange and red and all that coolness. And so I took it. So I actually didn't intend on getting a snake. And that has now happened to me multiple times at the All Ohio Reptile Show, where I walk in. Sometimes it's the Zerkles, by the way, where I go in and I'm not going to come home with a snake. And then I come home with 5. But anyway, so I had that snake through college into grad school. And it was probably my favorite rat snake I've ever had. And the reason why is it started off as a demon. I know you say they aren't. This one was a freaking demon, but I worked with it for a week and a half. And then I was taking it to education shows that I was doing in libraries. And then about 3 weeks after I had it, I felt comfortable enough to hand it off to kids to hold. And it basically turned into a freaking corn snake. So that's my bit of plugging for your, animals. But for those listening that are Texas rats, what the hell? What's your pitch to promote Texas rats?
So genuinely, none of my adults bite me. I do not get a lick of aggression out of adult snakes, and that's because I've either raised them by hand or I've gotten them in and they tend to be calm, or I work with them and whatever. I do notice, like all baby snakes, you're going to have little piss missiles for the first 6 months to a year. That's just the fact of the matter. And that's corn snakes too. You'll get aggressive corn snakes who are just pissed off, not aggressive, but defensive, who are just pissed off all the time. But I've noticed with my Texas rats, once I'm able to get them past that, especially that 1 year mark, and you're really working with them a lot, they chill out a lot. And especially as adults, they could be quite chill.
I'll agree with you. And I've even said before that, because I'll make jokes when someone asks if a baby is a black rat snake or a Texas rat snake, and I'll say, "Well, pet it; it'll tell you." and I do believe that. Meaning, because I work with a bunch of black rats and I work with a bunch of Texas, just leucistics. That's the only thing I work with as far as Texas, but. The babies are always more defensive as a whole. We'll just put it that way. As if I'm taking 100 of each, more of the Texas tend to be defensive. But I 100% agree with you. My adults, puppy dogs. I mean, none of them even act like they want to bite. And anytime I've had a leucistic for, as you said, a year or longer, nothing. And most of the babies, I mean, I think part of, while yes, they're more defensive, they show off a lot more than other babies do with that perfect S, come back. I mean, because there's some of the easiest snakes to take pictures of because they hold still and just, pose up at you. So, but I think that, that contributes to that reputation. The fact that as babies, they do a lot of posing and mouth gaping and what have you. And I think there's other snakes that have that same kind of bad rap. I think the same is true of blue beauties. Yeah. Although it's funny for me, I think blue beauties get more aggressive the older they get. The babies don't really do the defensive posturing, but the adults do, in my experience. But even then, the adults aren't really striky, that often. It's just more their mouth open and them acting like they want to. So I think that's where a lot of it comes from, is just that display, when they're young. Right. So, but I agree. My adults are, and I can tell you, I caught a Texas rat snake in Avery, Texas, little bitty town in Texas, right near the Louisiana border. Whenever I was 12, I think, I didn't even realize that Texas rat snakes were a thing. I thought it was a black rat snake. and brought that thing home, kept it for years, named it Avery. But I mean, it had beautiful red, in it. It was really cool. But I mean, yeah, he wasn't happy, and he was a full-grown adult when I got him. He wasn't happy when I picked him up, but
I'm sure
after being with me for a year, I mean, I remember. I mean, again, I was 12. I'd have the welder's gloves on, as I'd go in to grab him, because I didn't want to take a shot. But I mean, eventually, I didn't need any of that. He didn't have any problems. He was just as laid back as one of the wild black rat snakes are around here. So, yeah, I think they chill out. I agree with you.
Yeah.
So when it comes to care, what's your strategy there? Just work from a baby to a juvenile to an adult, and what you do as the Texas rat guy.
Yeah. So I keep them in relatively small, like I work with rack systems. I keep them in relatively small tubs to start. It depends what I have available space wise. I'll even use those the small FB5s or V15s, I believe, converted. Those are like the skinny ones that fit in the V18 slot, and you can fit 3 across on that. That's really good, and that actually lasts them a lot longer than you'd think. And I like to give them a nice deep substrate. They really like to burrow down in that as babies. And yeah, I use a cocoa chip substrate for all my animals. Actually, for every species I have, it holds humidity really well. I'm in Florida, and I'm keeping everything mostly ambient in my garage. So yeah, everything it works very efficiently for what I'm doing at this current time. I'm very kind of laid back when it comes to giving them like extra, because like they just don't need it. They kind of react well to what's going on in the natural environment here. So yeah, and even with this like cold front coming in, like the adults in brumation, like, and I've talked about how I've brumated in the past. Like I've brought them upstairs to my bedroom and put them in my dark closet, but it's been so cool here that it's been cooling down into that temperature zone that's worked in the past. So I haven't quite moved them yet. If the weather picks up and gets a little bit warmer, perhaps I will, but I haven't moved them yet.
Cool.
Gotcha.
And then obviously I grow them up in rack size. Sorry, to finish the question accordingly. And then just diet wise, I'll rotate between mice and quail. I'll do rats occasionally, though I have a good source at the moment for frozen mice and frozen quail. So I do that on food.
Cool. Gotcha. Do you do once a week, or do you feed them more than that?
As babies, I'll start them off like every 5 days, at least for like getting them going. But once they're like a couple months old, I think once a week is just fine for them. And I like, I don't know how to describe it, but I've always been good at giving like the eye test of what size to feed my animals.
Nuance.
Yeah. So like I'm good at just figuring out, okay, you need to upgrade to the next size. Like that's not enough for you. And I don't know. I haven't been the type of guy to say, let me feed multiple small prey items. I've always just bumped up to the next size. I think and this is just anecdotally from what I'm seeing out of my animals, I think it helps them grow a bit faster. And then even if that first time taking that slightly larger meal might seem a little bit big for them, I feel like they grow into it very quickly. So then by like the third or fourth time feeding them that size, their bodies are a lot more equipped to take it.
Gotcha. What's you're housing your adults in racks as well, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. You like CB70s, I'm guessing?
Yep.
Gotcha. Perfect. So do you're cycling your feed when let me back up. What morphs are you working with right now?
Yeah, so I have a bit. Scaleless is one for sure. I have leucistic here as well. I have anery, thanks to Kevin Sheehan, who is a guest on this show. We did a joint pairing that made some pretty powerful animals over the last couple years that are just fantastic. So I have some het anery stuff. Let's see. I also have a pair of the cadmium phase of the Texas rats, which is an interesting color phase that you don't see a whole lot. Now let's see, other morphs. So it's not necessarily a morph, and I've talked about them, and I know it. I don't know. I feel like it's slightly controversial, but I got some of these red phase Texas rat snakes that I've acquired in the last year that I'm going to continue working with and see what develops and what comes out of them. They're all small at the moment.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Most of them are. Yeah.
So what's your breeding process look like? And I'm always interested to hear this from when you're in Florida and you're doing ambient, because in the Midwest, I've got all the temperatures at our disposal. You know, whenever it drops, we can do whatever. So I'm curious how you guys do it there.
So what I've done the last 2 years, and I'll just say this might be only because I've done it with Texas rats so far, and perhaps they don't need as crazy of a change as some other North American species might need. What I've done the last 2 years is I let them flush out for the appropriate amount of time, usually like 3 to 4 weeks, in that like late October, start flushing them out in that late October range. Then by, Thanksgiving time, I'm basically putting them in, those locked tubs in my bedroom closet upstairs. So they are getting full darkness and fully no food for an extended period of time. And I haven't kept them in quite till that like Valentine's Day date, because the temperature is not low enough in my room to keep them down for that long. However, I do think with the, basically 0 photo period I'm giving them and no food, I think those stimulants have been enough to get, spark the breeding behavior and like follicular development and all that stuff. So that's what I've done. I'm not saying that will work for everyone, but that's what I've been able to do. And I've heard of people being able to breed them without brumating at all. So it doesn't surprise me that like my weird way of doing that is enough to make it work.
It's so funny sometimes how these animals will react to things we do, and sometimes they'll react even if we're not doing it. Meaning, with you doing just the change in lighting and feed, and it's triggering the response that you need. And then what I'll find sometimes here, I can keep all the lights on just as much as we have been. I can keep their temperatures just as high as we have been, but the barometric pressure changes because the cold fronts come through with winter, and my black rat snakes go off feed. Half my king snakes go off feed. They just feel it. They just know it's time, even if I still have all what we consider those stimulants to be just like they always have been. Because it's like, no, we need about 2 or 3 more weeks before, and they're like, no, we're done. We're done. So it's just crazy sometimes how it goes to what we say here all the time. There's really no one way. It's all these so many different ways work with so many different species. Sometimes it's just they're going to find a way.
These southern latitude North American colubrids, so things from Florida and East Texas and Louisiana, and I don't know if they need the full-blown brumation either. So I have a similar story in this room. So if you're watching this on YouTube, in this cage right there, I brought up a female Florida king that is a supposed Pinellas king. If you know what that is, doesn't look like any other Pinellas king on earth, but it does at the same time. So it's a super special snake, and I thought she needed to grow a little bit. So I didn't put her down for brumation in the garage. And I had a male Pinellas in here that I didn't put down for brumation in the garage. But I leave my window open, doesn't matter what time of year it is. And I have gobies in the tanks, in the vivs here. And they were going down a little bit, but nothing really over the top. And the male king, the male Pinellas, was just going absolutely insane in April, just zoomies all around. And I was like, I know why you're doing that. And so I took the female out. And what was really funny is it was the only pair of snakes in all the snakes I brewmated in this house that when I put the female in, I think it took the male about 90 seconds and it was locked. And this is the pair that we're not, I'm not putting them down for brumation. But, being from Florida, just the background, everything going on up here in West Virginia, was enough to trigger that hormonal response. So, that's cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Okay.
So what, before we move past, the Texas, what's some of the, what's the future hold for you when it comes to Texas rats? What are some of the things you're looking at doing with them?
Yeah, man. It's really just I'm just trying to put together the most pretty animals and try to get really cool things, whether they're scaleless animals, whether they're scaled animals. Because even with the normals, I think there's so much to do. And I mentioned it earlier, like I have these triple het females that were produced by Matt, and I got them from someone else, but they're just insane looking. They have color tones that you've probably never seen before. And I sent the picture to Max.
Max.
There's a bunch of pictures in there. That's one I produced this year. That's a possible triple het. That one looks real interesting too. And even an animal like this. So that one's 100% het scaleless and 50% het leucistic anery. And I just bet that animal's going to turn out real pretty. It looks nice as is right now, but it hasn't quite gone through that true color change yet. So we won't really know, but it's changed a lot since it's hatched. I updated that picture because I hadn't taken any new pictures for Morph Market since they hatched basically.
Yeah. All right. So let's scroll through these, Max. If you don't mind.
There's some more in there. So that's one I produced a couple years ago. That's the one I brought to Colubrid Fest, and everyone was kind of geeking over.
Yeah, that was a showstopper. I was one of the people that came over and was like, damn.
Yeah, so that is a scaleless that's 100% double het leucistic and anery. And it's quite evident that the scaleless plus the double het plays a really big influence.
And if you're not getting to see this, if you're listening on Spotify or what have you, if you've seen the difference in scaleless corn snakes, meaning what a normal corn snake looks like, and then what the color intensity is on a scaleless, how that changes and the shades change. And it's not true for every scaleless snake out there, but Texas are like corn snakes in the sense of, when you remove the scales, the color is, you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, it's just it's intense. And this animal certainly exhibits, that behavior.
Yeah. And the contrast is just insane. So this snake is the dad of that animal on the last picture. So that picture is credit to Kevin. So I had borrowed that animal for, 2 seasons, basically. I raised him up to adult size, but he bred his first year with me when he was just under 2 years old. So you could get males to breed relatively young, which we've noticed. I personally, I prefer females to be about 4 years old to breed. I think they give much better results. Even 5 years old is even better. I feel like you're going to get a much higher egg count and all of that. But yeah, so that's a scaleless anery that actually proved out 100% het leucistic from breeding. He was a pos het until I bred him and he came out. Cool. And if you actually notice and you see some of the pattern on his back for the YouTube viewers, and you looked at the previous snake, you'll kind of see where the pattern influence is on there. The kind of hourglass shapes on the back.
And another thing, that Joe's referring to here as well is on the first, I'd say roughly third of the body, the saddles they're very washed. They pretty much, they develop and get darker the further down the snake that you go. It's really neat look.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we've got
So that's one of the red phase ones. And to give the story
that.
behind this,
Yeah.
and again, I've asked a bunch of people about this, and I've had a load of different answers. So honestly, I'm going to leave it up to people's interpretation to believe what they want to believe. If you know, whatever you may feel about it, you may feel. So I purchased this animal as well as a group of some more. So there was this older gentleman who was vending in Orlando Repticon. What was this? A year ago? And he had this animal on the table, and it was a Texas rat. And like I was looking at it, and I bought it as a baby, and I was like, well, that's a Texas rat. And I see all this weird, like kind of pinkish, reddish coloration coming through. So I ask him about it, and he goes in and tells me this story. I get the guy's number. He's able to send me some pictures of some other animals in the bloodline. And I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, this is something that I've never seen before. And I'm like, those are clearly Texas rats. What you're looking at here is the first animal I picked up, and it's gone through quite a bit of change as it's aged. It's just gotten more and more red. Now, the thing is that it does have on like the neck, and if you're watching YouTube, you can kind of see it. On the neck, there's a little bit of some yellowish color there.
Yeah.
It's not quite, so it's not on the chin. The chin is white, but the neck has some yellow in it. And I've had some people give some opinions. I've had some people tell me they think it's Everglades. I've had people recently tell me they think it's Bairdii. I can understand where they're coming from. I'd say more so on the Bairds, but I don't know. And I have no reason to believe. And by the way, this gentleman passed away, unfortunately. I was able to, the animals passed through a bunch of hands, but I was able to get an extra 2.2 group of the red Texas rats. So I have 2.3 of them at this current time. They're all varying, like different shades of this red. But yeah, I mean, the least I can do is grow them up, breed them, and figure it out and see what I can do with it.
Cool.
And I know the hybridization is a big topic, and in fact, I even did like a small, very short podcast episode about it. So in reality, I have no way of knowing if it is or if it isn't, with the way rat snake taxonomy is, and if regions overlap, especially with like Texas rats and Bairdii, who knows? Who knows? But from the pictures, that I was sent and the story I was told, I have no reason to believe that the guy lied to me, because I did ask him, like, are these pure Texas? And he said yes.
Well, and that's, you know, I'll also point out when it comes to North American rat snakes in the hobby, now, you know, we can take Trans-Pecos out. We can take Bairdii out, because those are, you can tell exactly what you've got. But when you're talking Texas, when you're talking whether it's grays, blacks, or whatever we want to call them, but Eastern, Midland, Western, whatever, if it's in the hobby and it's not locale specific, no one can guarantee what they've got.
Yeah.
That's just a flat out statement. And this is coming from the black rat snake guy. You know, that's it. And it's even when, you know, and I'll have people ask me whenever I've shipped something, you know, well, on the box, it says, you know, Alleganesis. And, you know, I thought this was Obsoletus. And I'm like, pick. Yeah, because it's, you know, with the way all that shifted so much, you can't know for sure. It's, to your point, Joe, you take the word of the person that, you know, you got it from. You can ask them the history, the story. And at the end of the day, you know, you're either going to say, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's times I see things that I'm like, I can tell that's, you know, looks to me like it's got this in it. But that's just the cold, hard truth to anyone who is wanting to get really snobby when it comes to rat snakes, North American rat snakes in the hobby.
And I even asked, I brought this animal to Colubrid Fest with me to show it off as well. And I even asked Matt, I was like, hey, Matt, you got to take a look at this snake and just tell me what you think. So he came and looked at it, and he agreed that there are multiple things about this animal that point to Texas. And I do agree with him on every point, which are the things that I was seeing as well, between the head shape, the color of the head, like the silverish color of the head compared to the bluish silver compared to the rest of the body. Just the actual saddles, the way they look, the fact it hasn't blended into a different pattern yet.
That's
like
exactly,
if it was Everglades, if it was Everglades, like it would be striped or something.
Yep.
Like I don't see bear dye at all when I look at that.
No, that doesn't register to me at all. And if this is a hatchling photo right here?
No, this is like a year old.
Oh, then no. If that was a hatchling photo, then I would say, okay, I can see potentially Everglades. But if this is a year old and I'm seeing zero lines, and I don't mean distinct, but even the faint hint of lines, because I was thinking, Everglades or yellow, could be in there. Now I don't see that. If that's a year old, no, my money would be on Texas. Or there's not the signs that I would be looking for the suggested crosses, that are made there. So,
all right, let's do one more. There we go.
So that's a cadmium animal. That's the male I have. And it's interesting. I feel like mine look a little bit different than some other people's have, but I got it from someone who bred, pure cadmiums together. They're kind of defined by this almost like, I don't want to call it hypo throughout the body, but it's a very lighter tone. You see a lot more of like yellows it within the pattern. I'd say the saddle blotches get lighter as well. Like you could kind of for anyone who's watching, you could kind of see it here. There's also specks of red throughout the pattern, which is quite interesting. And it's also said that the cadmiums are sexually dimorphic on looks, and I haven't noticed that with mine. Mine actually look pretty similar. The females are supposed to stay darker, but I haven't seen evidence of that with my pair.
So this animal, to anyone who's not able to see this right now, and Zac, tell me I'm crazy. At first glance, that's very false water cobra-y. Just the whole coloration and just that, I glanced over. Can you? I'm just like, if I step back and squint, I'm like, man, that's.
Well, now I have to have 25 of them.
Oh, Zac, I don't know if you saw me send it, but just a side note, I was at the Miami Zoo the other day for my birthday, and I saw they had a false water cobra enclosure with a pair of them cohabiting. It was cool.
Nice, very nice,
very cool.
Yeah, no, you had to link it to a damn false water cobra.
Looking at it right there, I don't know if maybe it's the way it's laying, but that coloration, I
think it's a cool ass snake.
Yeah,
were these at Colubrid Fest or no?
Did I bring that guy? Oh yeah, I did bring that one because I had people asking me about them as well. I brought that male.
I feel like I would have asked about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, so you got the Texas rats, and then that led to this evolution to Asian rats.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how and when was this an inevitable thing? Like, were you keeping the Texas and always paying attention, or was it, I'm keeping the Texas, I'm keeping the ball pythons, and then I keep hearing about these Asian rat snakes, I'm going to dabble? Like, what was the origin for that?
No, so I found out about the Asian rat snakes, I'm going to say back in like 2016 or 2017, and I attribute that to Clint and Matt's Facebook pages, because that's where I used to like find those, and that's where I discovered those species. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So I actually, before my collection became what it was, I purchased my first coxswain from Carol Huddleston, who I believe used to breed them. She just doesn't anymore. But yeah, that's who I got my first coxswain from at the time. And that was back in, I want to say 2020, I bought that snake. It was a 2020 hatchling. So yeah, I was into that stuff, and it was stuff I wanted to keep well before this collection expanded the way it did. And I held off. I've told this story too. I held off on rhino rat snakes. Like that was the dream. That was the dream snake for me. And I held off because of everything I heard. And I thought they were way too sensitive for me to keep alive, when it turns out when I got them how easy they are to take care of. And I was like, well, I regret not getting these years earlier, genuinely.
Yeah. I love rhinos, but they just don't work here. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm about to, so, you know, I told you I got that trio, you know, and I got that adult male from Rob. So we have a trio of green bush on display here in the shop, and I've kind of cycled him out because the male was starting to get a little thin. I'm like, so we pulled him out. I resexed some holdbacks that we had. Turned out it was a pair. I originally thought it was two females, but that's why we resexed, because I was like, yeah, I bet that's going to be a male. Sure enough, turned out to be a male. So I put him in there. But now we're thinking, you know what? Why don't we go ahead and pull the trio off the floor, set them up in the back, let them, breed throughout the fall and winter. And I've got this adult male rhino that's not going to be doing anything next season because the females are still young. I think everyone's going to like to see a big green snake with a horn on it. So let's go ahead and we'll set them up in the same bio that those were in. And I think we're going to be good to go. They are neat. I dig them.
So do you just keep them ambient in your garage?
I do.
Is that it? Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The same with Coxeye and Volanti. That's how I'm keeping literally pretty much everything, actually.
Oh, cool.
How high does your garage get during the summer?
So I've had it get, so I keep all the Asians in the lower levels, just so they stay as cool as possible. I've seen temperatures like, the thing is that during the day, it'll hit a high at like the peak of the day, but it never gets like over this, and then it'll cool down by nighttime. But I've seen it be 82 in the garage. But that's only for, again, peak hours during the day. And then it'll cool down into higher 70s or mid 70s overnight. With this like little cold front we've had, I think I checked it this morning. I had it, dip into like the 60s, like high 60s this morning, which we just don't get quite a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. See, I have to deal with some of the opposite. In the nursery, there's a door that goes to the outside, and it's even got a little freaking mail slot that I've had to cover up, and so by that door, it gets cold. And we have a rack where in that particular rack, it's a bunch of blue beauty babies, Taiwan babies, Vietnamese, Mandarin babies, as well as, these Pitayas. And I'm like, I'm watching these things like a hawk because I don't want them to get too cold. I don't want them to get hot, but I don't want them to get too cold. So, I put thermostats on these. It's VE6s. And it's 3 of them on top of each other. And I've got a thermostat for each level because I'm going to be that freaking anal with these species. I've got a thermostat for each level, and I've got it set at 72. Just so it's like, I don't want it to get too cold over there by that door as, the temperatures continue to plummet, here in southern Indiana.
So what I will say also is that the way my garage is, and I feel like it's literally just the position of my house and the way the sun hits.
Yeah.
I think something about it, because the garage door is not insulated. It's something about the way the sun must hit or whatever, and the way my house is positioned, that it just doesn't get crazy hot in here. I've had other people tell me that in, concrete block homes that their garage is getting like 100. And I'm like, that just doesn't happen here. But I'm like, I'm not going to question it.
That's exactly what's going on. Because,
I've also mentioned that I'm also moving to New York, probably early spring next year. So that honestly might ruin my entire breeding season next year, and we'll find out. But so we'll have to relearn everything, the environment again back up there.
So real quick side tangent, and it's funny, the things that you get excited about as an adult, it's it's kind of like how you get pissed off when they move things around at the grocery store when you're an adult, it's so I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner. you're talking about the sun hitting a certain way on your home. Well, in this building, so we're in a big metal building. And when the sun gets on the west side of the building, which is the collection side, which is the nursery, which is all that, it'll heat up. And then, the temperature will drop real quick whenever the sun sets. So it's the side that has the most fluctuation, and it's the side I don't need to have fluctuation, right? So I got to looking, and I don't know why it didn't dawn on me this before to look into these, because they had to exist. So I had my HVAC guy come out and change out my thermostats to where, typically if you're setting your AC where, you want it at 68, if it gets higher than 68, it's going to blow on till it gets 68 and shut off. Well, I don't want that, because we have, like, during the fall where it's going to get, you don't know what to set it on. You don't know whether to set your AC or your heat, or you need to set your AC through the day and set your heat before you leave at night, because the temperatures are going to plummet. So I now in the whole building, so my rat rooms, my showroom, and the West Wing, our thermostats are set to where they're a range. So now it's if it gets past, I think it holds it within like a 6-degree range. So if it goes higher than 74, boom, it kicks on the AC. If it goes below, I think it's actually 70, boom, it kicks on heat. And that is life-changing for me to not have to worry about this crap. And because there's times where it's like, shit, we forgot to turn it off. You walk in and it's freezing, in the mornings, and, or, you forgot to flip the AC back on. So come 1 o'clock, you're like, why am I sweating? And so, I mean, it's been fantastic. And it's one of those things where it's another step in, okay, cool. I think next season we may do even better. We may have less feeding issues. Or one of the things, and Steve, he's pointed out, when he knows when it was fall, and it was before I did this, we'd have a week where we'd have regurges. What the hell happened? And it's because these big temperature fluctuations are taking place. As soon as we set that in, gone, done. Everything's set and back to normal. So it's just those little things that you figure out, okay, let's use technology. And suddenly, I mean, it's not expensive. It was so cool. So if anybody's using ambient heat or, cooling in their rooms or their buildings, look into that. They're not expensive. Get a thermostat that you can program with that range, and it really helps. So
nice.
So I know that you've bred some of the Asian rats.
Technically, no.
Technically, no.
Technically, no. I've been working towards getting these cockeyed to go, but I have not figured them out yet for whatever reason that may be. So I bought a trio from Matt, an adult proven trio, and I believe he paired them before I got them, and I had one of the females lay, and those eggs went bad pretty quickly, unfortunately. So I don't know. Since then, I saw breeding behavior a lot when I first got them. I've been pairing them again. I've been hitting them with food pretty well, and I just haven't been seeing much. So I'm not sure if it's something I'm doing wrong. Like, I know the temps are good, especially right now. Like, it cooled off in my garage, especially. So I'm just not quite sure what exactly I'm missing.
I'd say keep putting them together, especially to your point. Now that your temps are coming down, keep doing that, and they will surprise you. Meaning, there's times that there's cockeye females that I had no idea that they were gravid. They can hide, the egg, unless you're picking them up and looking. Right. They can hide the eggs. They also, if it's a well-fed female, she can lay the eggs and you not tell. I mean, I've had that happen where, they're crawling around, they look normal, and it's like, there's 4 eggs in here.
No, so, I know about this, so I've been like checking under all the hides. I'm like, have you, like, just in case, because even when I feed them, like, I feel like they look pretty thick, and then I'll pick them up and like kind of do like, run my finger down their stomach. I'm like, are you holding eggs? And I'm like, no, it's just the meal. Like, sometimes it looks like their scales are a little expanded. I'm like, what's going on here? So I have yet to figure them out, and it's going to be a learning experience, but hopefully we do. If worse comes to worse, I do have another male that's growing up. He's not quite ready to breed yet, but if for some reason this male doesn't get the job done, I'll try him eventually.
Do you have are you housing your adults together right now? Or are you putting them together and separating, or
I'm separating like occasionally, like to feed.
That's perfect. Just leave them together, and then when you're feeding, separate. That's
pretty much what I'm doing. Yeah,
that's exactly what I'd recommend, man. They'll get it done.
Yeah,
my guess is it was probably the temps.
Maybe
once they come down a little bit, once they are a consistent like 72, 74, I bet you're going to get some action. So
yeah.
So species wise, you have the rhinos, the volante, the coxeye. Any other? I know you're looking to purchase because I listened to your episode with Matt. So what other species do you have?
You know what? At the moment, I think I have to take a chill just because of that potential move. So I think I'm on a buying hiatus for now. Just gonna enjoy what I have and let the process work. I think because I got good stuff going with the ball pythons too. Which that collection I've significantly decreased in the last year or so to make more room for colubrids. I picked up a pair of cow kings at Daytona. Yeah, I was just like, you know what, because like I said, those were animals I bred at the pet store. Like I like cow kings. They're fun, they're cool. I also did get a pair of Phrynonax Pacillinotus.
Nice.
And those are interesting. They're fun. I'm excited to watch them grow and see what kind of colors they develop. And yeah.
I had
some of the trigger on those multiple times.
Me too. We're talking
I go like this because I'm trying not to be that guy that has the Noah's Ark snake collection, which I totally have right now. So.
We're talking in like the last 3 weeks. I almost pulled the trigger on some, and I was fine. I was like, just work with you. Got the Pitias. Work with those. You got way too much on your plate to take on something else that is not just drop a pink and run. So it's just ease up, buddy. But those will eventually be in the collection. I envy you there. Those are nice.
Yeah. No, and between those guys and the rhinos, and I know I've mentioned, I keep in racks, but those are the two species that I definitely want to elevate to caging in the nearest future that I can feasibly do it appropriately. I mean, right now I have the adult rhino I have in like even a V70 rack, and like that's plenty of room for her. And I actually gave her I got some perching that works in like a tub so that she can climb and like kind of move around like that, as well as a nice elevated hide box. It's a cool perching tool, but she has plenty of room to roam around. But I definitely want to do a nice like naturalistic type cage for the rhinos eventually, and even the Pacillinotus as well. I think that'll be cool.
Very cool.
And those are species that deserve it at the very least.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. So future basically is we got to get this move to New York under your belt, and then we'll figure out where we go from there.
Pretty much.
Okay, that's fair. So basically what I'm hearing is that will happen before Colubrid Fest. And then when you show up at Colubrid Fest next year, it's going to be very dangerous for Joe.
It might be. That might be the case. It'll also be a shorter drive.
Yeah. Oh yeah, a lot shorter. Yeah, we're going to talk about that here shortly.
Got it.
Okay. Well, if it's okay with both of you, I think we can segue to the podcast.
Yeah, but let's talk about the podcast now. I'm interested to see how this came about.
Yeah, and I want to tell a little short story. So I kept seeing back when your podcast started, I would scroll and I would see that kind of iconic Colubrid corruption, Facebook post you did back. It was different when you started than it is
the old thumbnail. Yeah.
And I distinctly remember where I was. I was in my living room and I was like, now to be honest, at first I thought, what the hell is this? But then I was like, no, what is this? And then I realized in our THP chat people kept talking because you were basically kind of going through the ranks of the THP guys as guests. And, then I thought, okay, well, if he's with them, it's cool. So there was just the only time there was any territoriality with me was like the first 48 hours.
Yeah.
That was it. And then after that, I was like, yeah, we could have more. And then I remember watching one and was like, damn, this is good stuff. So, but at the time, weren't you more into the ball pythons than like you had your Texas rats? So the question I want to ask is, A, what's the origin? And B, what made you, if you had more balls at the time, what made you segue over to the colubrids?
Right. So, my first love with the reptiles was always the colubrids. And in fact, when I was in my high school years and working at that pet shop, especially, and maybe this was because we legally could not have pythons there because in New York City, all pythons and boas are illegal. So we could not have them there as colubrids only. I used to say they're pet rocks. They're stupid. I don't like them. I hated them. But no, I felt like, I was listening to CCR when it first started. So like I've always been into it, and I was getting into, more of the Asian species, but I was seeing more and more things, and I was just starting to really enjoy the colubrids, and I was kind of getting this feeling. I was like, I really I just like these animals a lot, and I think there's more to do with it. And I see the way the ball python market is and the way social media is, and I'm like, this is different, and this podcast territory is a little untapped. I was a part of this like panel type ball python podcast at the time, which I'm no longer a part of, and I stopped doing that after like, I don't know, the first 5 to 10 episodes of Colubrid Corruption, and going on other ones as well. But there was just this point I was like, I think I could do this myself, and it's something that we're not seeing. There's a lot of live YouTube reptile podcasts. And I'm like, this is something that's missing. And I'm like, you guys were there, but you guys were also, I always try to phrase this as nicely as I can, but like you guys were attractive there for, I feel like, the nerdy people who are like just really like hardcore colubrid people. Whereas what I wanted to try to do was get people over from that ball python side. I wanted to try to bring them over, and that's where the name came about, Colubrid Corruption, because that's what I would always do. I would send pictures of my snakes in these group chats and stuff. I'm like, you guys, you're missing out. You're sleeping on this. And between you guys and Clint, you were on it recently, the Trap Talk Reptile Network. Like MJ, I'm very good friends with him. But like I took a lot of inspiration from both you guys and from him, and I kind of combined that together, and my show came about. And obviously, if you go back and listen and watch to those first couple episodes, I was so nervous. I didn't really I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But like after a while, I really settled into it. And I'm super, super comfortable doing those shows. And honestly, I just really enjoy it. It's like a little weekly escape. Besides struggling to find guests sometimes. Besides struggling to find guests sometimes, I really do enjoy it. And I'm so glad that I have the audience I do, because there's people that genuinely listen every week, and like what's said on there, and I'll get compliments based on the content of the episode, and I know that's technically a compliment to the questions I'm asking, because those things may have not come about if I didn't ask certain questions. So I don't know. I just the feedback I've got and all that, it just kind of pushes me to keep going with it.
Very nice.
Very cool.
I like it.
So another thing I want to say, this is respect points. So like here we are. We have Clint and I doing this podcast. We have Max behind the scenes doing our, putting our images up. When we get done, Eric from MPR rolls in, downloads it, edits it, puts it up. And so there's four individuals associated with every one episode. And with Colubrid Corruption, there's Joe, and there's Joe.
Yeah.
With Joe and Joe.
Then Joe comes in.
And then Joe comes in. So
I'm a one-man show, man.
Yeah. So is it difficult? Like I just have mad respect for you because Clint and I at the time we're doing the damn outline, I don't know, 45 minutes before. Like I literally got out of my one class today and zoomed home. My family was off at my son's drum practice. And then I'm running around like a madman, getting the outline ready and then making the link and doing all that kind of stuff. And I think about this actually often. How the hell is Joe doing this all by himself? So I want to know, like, how the hell are you doing this all by yourself? Because for the longest time, I thought you were part of THP Network. And then I realized he's not part of that network. He's doing this on his own. So that is insanely impressive. So I want to know how you do it because...
Yeah, so at first I was having a buddy help me out with the thumbnails. That's where the original thumbnail came from. I had a old friend of mine who's a lot better at like graphic design than I was. He was doing it, but then I was like, I don't want, and I felt really bad because a lot of times I would get like last minute guests and I would have to like pressure him like, hey, can you make this thumbnail for me, please? I need to post it like now. And I was like, I can't do that to him anymore. And I was sending him some money to make my thumbnails, even like for regular YouTube videos. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself. So I learned how to do Canva pretty basically. And I know my thumbnail looks a lot more basic than it used to, but I feel like it's like simple is better sometimes. The original one was very in your face. I think there was too much going on, but that was my original idea. But things change. I try to, at this point, I try to plan as far in advance as possible, though sometimes I'm not very good at that because sometimes the weeks just sneak up on you and I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have a guest for this week or whatever.
We might know about
that. Like it just sneaks up on you, or sometimes, and respect to all my guests, but sometimes they're very slow with getting me pictures for the thumbnail and I'm like, I can't even promote the episode. I'm like, hey, can you get this over to me, please? So that happens sometimes. But yeah, it's just kind of finding the time to do everything. And I try to plan accordingly. I try to promote the show ahead of time. So I want to make sure I have almost everything I need in advance. And so I'm not scrambling last minute. I have everything in advance, so I make the StreamYard link, which makes the YouTube link, and all that is like connected through there. And then a bunch of stuff is really just copy and paste and simple editing. And then my outlines, I'm kind of like you. I do cram that stuff sometimes last minute, but sometimes it's better when it's fresh on my mind. I don't always like doing that too far in advance. And sometimes people ask me, they're like, hey, do you have an outline? I'm like, I'll try to get it to you early, but like,
see, we won't send
don't give it.
I know.
Nope. That's it. Is we refuse.
I try not to.
Yeah, we always find that if a guest has any kind of, and for everybody who's listening, when we talk about having an outline, just know it's very quick bullet points on just keeping us.
I do too.
Yeah, it's not like some in-depth thing. It's just hey, here are the things you want to make sure you hit. But even us, I mean, there's times where I'll glance over at it just to see where we're at to make sure we've not missed. But we find if we were to give someone an outline, it's not organic. It doesn't. It's not fluid. Yes, and it feels too choppy, and we're not like that. And it's funny because when Zac is commending you for doing this yourself, and the fact that we have two of us. That's one of the things that when I'm describing the podcast to someone, when I'm describing CCR who's never heard it before, I'll say one of the great things about the two of us is we're both pretty good on our feet in a conversation, but it's so nice to have two of us that are like that.
Yeah.
Because inevitably, whenever I hit that moment when it's like, okay, I just want 1 second to think about where I want to go with, another question, Zac's boom. And he's talking.
Yep.
Well, and then same thing, I'll come in when he's doing it. So for you to not have that guy next to you to take just a little bit of pressure off of you is what it does. It just takes.
I'll definitely Yeah, I'll definitely agree. And there are times where I'm like, I've had episodes and it's nowhere near like the guest fault. Just sometimes I've had episodes that even fall short, like just short of an hour and a half. And I'm like, I feel really bad because I've had episodes that go over 2 hours. And I'm like, even sometimes like this is a guest that I know has good information. And I'm like, what am I missing? And like, during the show, I want to say you can't kind of recover from that. So if you get through things and then like, I get to my wrap up stuff, it's like, that's it. And I do feel bad sometimes when that happens. But there are also sometimes where we're able to get into a better conversation and other people are just kind of giving answers. And this is not, I'm not talking about any guests in particular. I'm just saying it depends on the content of the actual conversation going on. So, some episodes will be longer than others, but yeah, it's definitely hard being the one-man show because I don't get to like bounce ideas off. It's more like, do me and the guest bounce off well?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Exactly. And you just nailed it right there, because it's going to be, where the guest falls in the conversational, ability,
Yeah.
and relaying the information for you, because that's all you get to bounce with. So that was a great point, Joe.
Yeah.
But you do it well. I mean, I enjoy the show. I listen. You've got good guests on there, and you're doing a great job. You have motivated us to have occasional live shows. So
Nice.
That's like always been my favorite part. Whenever I went on Snakes and Stogies, whenever it was going on with you, I absolutely love that part of people being able to communicate right then and there.
Yeah.
Whenever you're having it, that's excellent. I mean, so that's definitely a smart move. For us, we would love to be able to do that for every show, but damn it, we can't commit to the same day. I mean, it's so hard for us at this point.
Well, I changed on you guys. I asked for a different time, so I know it just doesn't, not for everyone. And this was just a bad like week for me. My girlfriend wound up staying longer because she came down with not feeling well, a fever. But
I was going to say, I'd rephrase that, Joe. Because if she listens to this, it was a bad week for me. My girlfriend stayed longer.
No.
I'd say that words are important.
No,
Joe.
there were other things. Well, it was my birthday too, so she was here for that, and and some other stuff. But
all
it is
good.
What it is.
All good. Okay, so so that's another fun fact with your fun element of our podcast and kind of synergy is there has definitely been a couple times, because to be honest, you probably do the same thing. We definitely pay attention to your guests because we don't like if Corruption drops a Milk Snake episode, we don't want to drop a Milk Snake episode, but we just did that.
We just shoved it down
by accident,
throat, didn't we, guys?
I love the Milk Snake stuff.
What was funny was that, so I don't know when you guys recorded that, but the funny thing was I recorded that episode with David before my episode with Matt even happened. I think I recorded it a night or two before. So we filmed that like just over a week in advance. And I was like, okay, well, we have this episode. I needed it for that weekend. So yeah, and then I saw the episode come out Wednesday and I was like, shit, we're both Milk Snakes this week. I'm like, all right.
But there have been a couple times when I've seen a guest and I was like, I was going to get that guy. Okay, well, we're going to put that off for 2 months. Like, yeah, so no, that was really funny. And if you don't know what we're talking about, we had our last episode with Cole Grover, who did all things Gentilis, Western Milk Snake, which you all know if you listen. And then that came out on like Wednesday. And then on Sunday, Joe had, or Friday, maybe, I don't know.
It came out on Sunday. Yeah. Yeah.
And then Joe had on Dean, who does the coastal milks and everything. So
yeah,
it was just like bam, bam, milk snake. So
there was even, I mean, I love some of the banter online, Facebook that people were posting, afterwards.
Yeah.
You want to talk about just force feeding the milk. I loved it. I loved it. Something else that, want to make sure that we point out that you and your show were one of the biggest cheerleaders out there, period, when it came to Colubrid Fest. I mean, you were very, very crucial in helping us get the word out there to, multiple audiences and really letting everybody know what it was, how excited you were for it. And, so we certainly want to thank you for that. And I guess, one of the questions we then want to ask is, so why was Colubrid Fest so important for you? What made it such a big deal to you?
Yeah. So, obviously, I had you guys on it. And like I said before, like, I mean, part of my show, you guys are an inspiration for my show. And because you guys were putting together this event all about colubrids, it was like I'd be doing myself a disservice by not promoting this thing and not going to this thing. Like, as soon as you guys announced it, I was like, I have to go, even though I technically planned it very late, or at least the vending part. I planned it all very late, but I was like, I have to go to this show. There's no way I'm not attending. And yeah, I mean, I had to use the podcast as a platform to promote it because, the brand new show, it's like, obviously we've said with like expectations were exceeded, but we had to make sure we got to that point. So, so obviously I wanted the show to be as good as possible. And I've just said it over and over, judging the feedback from post show and people who did not attend, who heard about the show. It seems like next year is going to be even bigger and better. So as soon as those details come out, I'm going to be promoting it every week for the 2025 show again.
We certainly appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you drove through a damn hurricane, man. And you had your cars breaking down. Helene's bearing down on you. Nobody knew what Helene was going to turn into, by the way. I mean, you got stuck in Georgia. Like, I mean, it's like.
Well, for reasons I can't expand on, I'll no longer have that car next year. But
nice.
Okay. Nice.
So you kind of hit on it when you were talking about the different flavor between corruption and CCR, and we embrace our nerddom openly.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I like the fact that we are similar but different.
Yeah.
And that we play well together.
We do.
You know what I mean? We enjoy each other, all of us.
Well, that's the thing is, like, if I was regurgitating the same type of content as you guys, then mine wouldn't be original, and I don't even know if you could call it original, but like it wouldn't be genuine. It wouldn't be me. It would just be me trying to copy you guys. And even the fact I've had on a bunch, like we've shared a bunch of the same guests, like we've talked about it before. If I was if I had the same exact conversations with those people, then people wouldn't be that interested in it. But it seems every time we've had an overlapping guest, there's a different type of conversation. Yeah, that's happening.
And one of the things I can definitely say is that you are absolutely nailing your generation. Like the Gen Z peeps, I know they listen to us, but they definitely listen to you. And at Colubrid Fest, you represented Gen Z in our great big kumbaya generational conversation at the end of the day, which was pretty awesome. It was, if we could get John Lasseter to talk about Gen Z and not pop a vessel, we were doing something awesome.
Love you, John.
Yeah, we love you, John. But and Rob Zerkle. So but you were just very articulate when you were talking about things. You don't know this. I think I don't know if I said this in our recap show, but I asked you this question about mentors, if you remember, and how we always have a mentor.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, I don't really know if I would, I think you said I would prefer to have multiple mentors. And that's what, the internet provides us and social media. Yeah. I never thought about that element. That was kind of like a boom moment for me that day. Because Clint and I are 80s, 90s kids, and we didn't have, like, you found a person, you begged them to give you your time. And if you did, you were lucky. But now, I just never thought of mentorship in that way. So, but it was a really cool perspective. And I'd just like for you to talk a little bit about your perspective of where Gen Z is in colubrids today, like what that represents, because you just do a really good job of speaking the good here. Because like, are they all ball python people? Is there a niche there? Do you see anything with your friends?
Yeah.
What do you?
So there's a weird mix, I feel like, and it's funny because I feel like most of the circles I'm a part of, I'm usually one of the younger people, so I don't think I get to see a fair side of my generation in there. But from what I've seen, there's people who are at least close to my age. There's some of them in ball pythons where they're trying to make a buck or make the coolest snake, whether or not they want to say they're in it for just the money or not, whatever. Sometimes it's other species, but then there's like this hardcore group of people who are just, really about certain, colubrids that we keep and whatnot. And I've interacted with some of those people online, and it's great to get their messages, and I really enjoy it. I have it's a shameless plug, but I have a Patreon as well, and most of those members are on the younger end of the spectrum as well, like closer to my age. So I think that's cool to see people who just, enjoy listening to the podcast and enjoy that stuff. And then there's also this weird group that I do not interact with whatsoever, who are the social media keyboard warriors who think that you need a bioactive gigantic enclosure for a baby corn snake and stuff like that. And I really just don't see this. And I think that's just because I don't know. I don't follow everyone on Instagram, and I'm not on I do have a TikTok, but I'm not on reptile TikTok. So I don't see all this extravagant stuff that people do. So I miss out on some of it, but I don't know. There's a mix of everything. And I think the more representatives our generation gives towards a certain craft within the hobby, the more people will be able to attract, So hopefully me doing what I do, if I inspire someone to, get into reptiles, that would be amazing.
No, you're doing the Lord's work, my friend, getting the younger guys in.
Nice.
I learned on the zoo cruise trip I went on, the
which I was not invited to on that one either. Just to make sure everybody can, and it was kind of in my vicinity. So just put
we
that
will
out
invite you next year, my friend.
And I am in no way bitter about it at all.
Not bitter at all. Not even a little bit. But I was finding out that the music I listen to is now referred to as dad rock, and I was like, what?
Is it Creed and Nickelback?
Well, I mean, I'm not a dedicated. I don't know about Nickelback, but Creed, yeah, and yeah, see, boom, there it is. I didn't even know it was a freaking phrase. Now I don't want the world thinking that's the only music I listen to.
You should tell Chris Montross that Creed is your favorite band and see his reaction.
Oh, I know about Mr. Montross and his response to Creed.
I love it.
So, but anyway, but so we're pulling in our generation. Well, I know that. And millennials, but Gen Z is the ticket, and I spend my whole career is Gen Z, being a professor. And I got my herp kids right now building Vivs, and the Vivs they're building are insane. And but the way that they're going about building them is not the way you're just so fluent with the internet that your ability to find information is insane. But you just got to make sure you find the right information. And the fact you're putting out that information is a pretty big deal. So kudos to you.
Thanks. Yeah. And the other thing I feel like possibly with our generation, and I just thought of this now, is this hobby is expensive. Let's be real. And the cost of everything has gone up over the years. For someone my age, the only reason I was able to do this on the scale that I've brought my collection to is because I've lived at home. And I live with my parents. Not everyone my age has had that luxury for that long. Or they just, they weren't making enough money to sustain it. So not everyone can have a collection my size and, be okay with that food bill and with, and all that stuff. And I have the production to be able to sell, and, that's me feeding my animals still, that's just going back into the food bill and stuff like that. So, that's another big factor. And perhaps there's a bunch of people out there with like 1 or 2 snakes that can't really expand more, that we just don't know about because they don't put themselves out there to reptile social media, because, 1 or 2 snakes worth isn't enough for like a reptile page on Instagram, you know what I mean?
Right. I've kind of got a thought on that. And I almost wonder if social media and really just the internet in particular is part of what holds some individuals back. Because, I think back about, when I was your age, I was probably at around 60, 60 snakes at that point, be my guess. And I think it was because back then we didn't have these Facebook groups that would tell you everything. You're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. You know what I mean? Where you get beat down to hell to make you feel like if I don't have a $700 enclosure, that I'm not doing it right, or that I don't care. I'll give you just a little piece on one of the conversations I had on after Black Friday. Told you I was talking to Rich with Vivarium Electronics.
Yeah.
They have a caging system. They have 4x2x18s and 4x2x2s. And these are perfect for like bearded dragons. They're, screen tops, sliding doors. They're awesome. I carry several of them here. And he is now out of the 4x2x2s. He and I are both firm believers that for a bearded dragon, a 4x2x18 is plenty. An adult bearded dragon is really not going to use any more of that height. You're just going to spend more money on lighting and electricity to heat that much more of an enclosure that they're really not going to use. And this is coming from people. I keep hundreds, we've got plenty. And he's done the same. This is a guy who's manufacturing them. And he says, the 4x2x2s, he's out, at this point, completely gone. And he was shocked by that because he had, originally did more of the 4x2x18s because that's what they need. But if you go online and you search, what do all the websites tell you? What does all the Facebook groups tell you? Right. And so that right there is
everything. That's the universal cage size.
Bingo. And so that's what we're saying is, and I think that's one of the things that don't get me wrong. I'm not going on here and say, hey guys, shove everything into as small, as you can, because I'm a firm, even right now, I have animals in racks that I am working on transferring into caging. I want to use more caging than what I use now. And we're doing that. But I do think that the message is out there that kind of may throttle down younger keepers because it makes them feel like even if they try to not have the 4x2x2 when they're starting out, and God forbid they take a picture of their enclosure and put it on a Facebook group, because they're going to be reamed on anything and everything that, someone demands they should change. So I think
the only group, Facebook groups are such a toxic place. The only one I contribute to the most is the Texas Rat group I'm in on Facebook, when it seems like newer keepers have general questions, or I just chime in on something. There's also some other rat snake ones where if there's like a question that's not answered super well and I could give a better answer to it, I'll usually try to give my input there. But yeah, Facebook it's just a terrible place for information. And unfortunately, a lot of people, like, that's their first solution is go join a Facebook group. And I think it turns a lot of people off, unfortunately.
It does. Well, and again, I've said this before. I think so much of what we read online, and it's not experienced information, it's regurgitated information. It's someone has said that a 4x2x2 is what's needed. Someone has researched for whatever they're wanting to write on their page, and they found, oh, it says 4x2x2 is what's needed, so let me add that to my care sheet. Then the next person adds it to their care sheet. The next person adds it to their care sheet. And suddenly, well, if you look on these 10 sites, they all say the same thing. And it all originated from one, so like,
yeah. So thank you for everything you're doing. There
Absolutely.
You
go. No problem.
Okay.
Thank you for the compliments.
So final statement, and then we'll get out of here because we're kind of going over, but
sure.
It's been a good one. We got to ask you the question: where do you see herpetoculture going, specific to colubrids?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be growing into bigger and better things. Genuinely, between what we're doing here on our respective podcasts and Colubrid Fest, I like, like we talked about, I did a lot of promoting for that, and I talked about it even in all like the ball python group chats I'm in. I was like, I went to Colubrid Fest, I drove there, and all this, and the more we talk about it, the more we post about it, the more people we get to go there and then talk about it to other people, the bigger and better it's going to be. And that was, in the words of people who were at the show, that was one of the best shows they've ever been to. So I genuinely think what we're doing plus Colubrid Fest is only going to help this grow even more. But on top of that, I think people are interested in working with different species. We're seeing a lot of people who work with the standard stuff like ball pythons and geckos, like they're wanting to expand into other stuff because they see that there's this cool stuff out there. And a lot of those cool species lie under colubrids and colubroids. So,
yep.
Amen.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. So thank you for coming on. We, of course, will have you on again, but I think you know that. So,
yeah.
But with that being said, people want to find you, want to find the podcast. Where do they go?
Yeah, you could search on social media at Meteoric Serpents everywhere. That's METEORIC Serpents. Pretty much all platforms. You could also search Colubrid Corruption on Google. That podcast will come up. You could look at it on all podcasting platforms like Apple, Spotify, all that, and YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much everything.
All right. Okay, Clint.
You can find me at Metazotics on Facebook, MetazoticsLLC on Instagram. You can always email me at metazotics@gmail.com. Please check us out at metazotics.com. And as always, use CC Radio for 5% off of anything that you purchase. As a reminder, Colubrid and Colubroid Radio, check that out as well, please.
All right. And finding me, Dr. Crawdad on Instagram, Zac Loughman on Facebook, and then you can email me at zloughman@westliberty.edu. We want to thank Morelia Python Network for being our network. We want to thank Eric for all the work he does on the back end once we hit end recording. He's a godsend for us. And like I said, we also want to thank our tech wizard, Max. That's his name. You all can't see him. But we would be able to do what we do. He helps with uploading stuff to the Facebook page. We will inevitably get the Instagram page fixed. I got to get this semester done, and so I can actually focus. Yeah. And finally, thank you, Joe, for coming on, and thank you for helping us get the good word out on colubrids and colubroids. So
100%.
Yep. So with that being said, be it afternoon, morning, evening, or night, whatever time it is, have a good one, and we will catch you next time.